Hello and welcome to the next episode of this Pontiac Lemans build. Today, we're going to bench bleed this master cylinder. A lot of master cylinders will come with like a cool kit that plugs into the ports here and it feeds some hoses into the top and things like that. But then again, some of them don't. This is a rebuilt unit, it doesn't come with that kit, so I had to basically cobble together some junk from around the garage. I got like an AN fitting here with a hose threaded onto it, and then I found this like 3/8 brake line that I just basically twisted into a pretzel and shoved it in the top. And we're gonna basically bleed this off the car, because you always want to do that, otherwise you end up fighting air bubbles in your brake system for the rest of your life. So what we have is we have a vise that I haven't mounted to my workbench because I built a new one and it's not there yet. We have a cat shirt as a rag. And then we have some brake fluid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour some brake fluid into the master cylinder, in both ports of course. And you want to make sure that these hoses stay where they're supposed to be. This one is going to be a fight, I know it. Because you don't want air to go back into the master cylinder. You want to always be pumping air out. So, with the hoses going up and around and back into the liquid again, on the front and the rear, making sure these two fittings are tight, what we're going to do next is we're going to pretend we're a brake pedal. I'm going to take this, I don't know, looks like a nut driver, and I'm going to push in here until all the bubbles come out. I'll see if I can do it with one hand. Oh, there we go. So you basically just push into the master cylinder. Fluid comes out of the master cylinder hoses, hopefully, and, well, actually air does first, and then fluid, and pretty soon you've bled it on the bench and everything will work. So I'm going to do this for a few minutes and we'll see what happens. Okay, I have just pumped this probably 30 times or so, going all the way to bottoming it out and then coming back, and there's no more bubbles coming out. I'm keeping enough fluid in there to make sure that it doesn't bottom out there, and you can see there's actually some brake fluid in my hose here to show that it is actually going around and doing what it's supposed to do. So, moral is, this is bench bled, and now we can shove it on the car. Let's do it. On the master cylinder side of things, on the vehicle itself, there's two bolts that we need to remove going into the booster, right here, and one on the back. And then we got to disconnect these two lines and hope we don't snap the lines off. So I'm going to shoot a whole bunch of PB blaster all over these and hope I can crack them loose. I'm gonna guess they're gonna break, but we'll see. The other thing to notice is down here on the bottom, it's all wet because I just sprayed a bunch of rust pension all over it, but you can see the paint is actually stripped off. So either the master cylinder is leaking and it's dripping brake fluid down the booster, or somebody has spilled brake fluid all over the place and stripped the paint off of it. So yeah, brake fluid strips paint, and you can tell that this one is either leaking or somebody has basically been sloppy with it. So either way, we're gonna rip it off and replace it with a new one. Hey folks, bad news. This line and this line are both gonna snap off as soon as I turn them. There's just no getting around it. You can see, if you watch this thing, watch it. Oh, hold on, let me focus better. There we go. Yeah, so you can see this is about to snap off. But you know what? Sometimes you just gotta commit to stuff. So I'm just gonna go ahead and power through it because I just don't care, and making a new brake line is really pretty easy to do. So there you go. Now it's snapped off. And now we can move on in life. So I'm gonna pull this off, and the new master cylinder came with these suckers, so I'm just going to pop this in there to stop the bleeding. Of course, I'm using my left hand, which is like worthless. Oh, Hello, got it. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and snap off the other one. And at that point, I'm going to replace the master cylinder. And then I'm just going to have to make some new lines. Not that big of a deal. I'm probably not going to do it today. But at least we'll have committed and we can move on. Alright, so here we go. Snap off the second one. I am using a line wrench, so that's a good start, right? This is kind of like doing exhaust work. Like, rather than trying to make an old exhaust pipe work, it's just better to just cut the whole freaking thing off and start over. Because it's just way less work to do that. Alright, so that's now snapped off. Hopefully we can pull it out. I'll end up reusing these two fittings that I'm pulling out of this master cylinder on the new brake lines. And gosh, using this thing just takes forever. Let's try my right hand. There we go. All right, set that aside. Pop this thing in there. Okay, so now I can pull the master cylinder off, I'll dump all the fluid out of it, and I'll pop the new one on. Alright, let's do this. Got it. Alright, now let's go dump this thing out. Alright, before I dump this, one thing that may be worth noting is you see the fluid that's all around this like purple piston right along the bottom? I'm going to go ahead and declare this thing was leaking, and that is why it is covered in brake fluid like snot. So it's probably a good thing that I'm replacing this, because my guess is it was leaking and junk anyways. So good choice. Alright, dumping it out. Alright, so the master cylinder is back in place, the new one is, and you can see I took the plugs from the old master cylinder and I popped them in the new one because there's now fluid in this. I also bolted it to the brake booster. And I also ripped out the old brake lines. I'm going to be making a couple of new ones, and I think we'll probably do that next. But for now, I just have a rag sitting under here in case any drips happen. And I also sprayed the whole thing down with brake cleaner because, as I said before, brake fluid strips paint, and I don't want to strip all the paint off my new master cylinder. So, I guess we'll go to the brake lines. Alright, so I now have the two lines that go to the master cylinder. Here's the broken end. Off of the car. And I have these two guys here as well. So the first thing I need to do is take these broken lines out of these fittings because I'm going to reuse those. I'm also going to reuse the ones on the end of this line. So I'm going to end up cutting all those off and then putting them on the brand new lines that I have. But first, we have to get the old lines out of the fittings. So that's step one. I'm going to basically cut them off, put them in a vise, and smash them out with a punch. Hopefully that works. We'll see. All right, let's try it. And this is working pretty badly. So, since I can't smash it out with a punch, I'm going to now drill it out with a drill bit. And I'm doing that because when I'm hitting it with a punch, it's just pushing the whole fitting down through my vise, and it's just not working. And I don't want to destroy the threads on it, and I don't want to crush the whole fitting because I need to reuse it. So I'm going right for the drill next, since the punch doesn't work. So here we go with the drill. Let's see if it works. You know what's awesome? When you start drilling into it and the whole fitting starts spinning. So it's now stuck on my drill bit, but it came out. So now I just gotta clean up this fitting, and then I can use it again. So I'm gonna do the next one, and after that, we'll probably bend up some lines. All right, let's do this. Okay, so I got both of the lines out of the fittings, and now I got these other lines, the other end of the line, and I need to remove these fittings from the lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut the flares off each end, and that will allow the bends in the lines to stay exactly the same so I can use them as a template, but it will allow me to take these fittings off so that I can get them on the new lines. So I'm going to cut these off, and I'm going to pull the fittings off. Here we go. Come off of there. Oh, there we go. There's one. All right. And there we are. Okay. Now it's time to bend up some lines. Okay, so we can now start putting bends in the lines. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this. You can do it just by hand, bending it, or you can actually use a tool to do it. I'm probably going to use a little combination of both. Essentially, you just want to follow the curves of this old line and not kink the new one. The very first thing you have to do, though, is put the fitting on the end of the line. The new lines already have flares on the end of them, so you put a fitting on there, and then you can start bending it. And then when you get to the other side, you'll flare the other side, and you'll have the fitting on there. So I'm going to bend this one up, and then we'll do a flare. Okay, so I made the new line, and I even found this nice brand new little mesh stuff to go over it, hanging around my garage, which is pretty fantastic. So you can see I've kind of duplicated the bends. It's pretty close enough. Now before I flare it, the two things that you have to do before you flare it are, since I cut this end, you always want to ream out this end. I don't have an actual reamer because I'm not that cool, I guess, and mine actually broke a while ago and I haven't replaced it. But anyways, I'm just going to use a screwdriver and just kind of jam it in here, spin it around, and just make sure there's nothing like sharp hanging in there. The other thing you want to do is flatten this out with a file. So basically run a file right across it to make sure that it is perfectly flat. If you don't do that, your flare is going to end up terrible. The other thing that could happen, and it happens to every single person with a double flare set, is this is the double flare flaring tool. Focus, there we go. And this, if you don't ream it out and then flatten it, right here, it's gonna get stuck in there, and then you'll never get it out, and you're gonna break the little nub off of this, and then the whole tool is useless, and you won't be able to flare 3/16 line anymore. So, make sure you flatten it, make sure you ream it out, and then we'll go on to the double flare. I'm gonna do that next. Okay, so now you got your fitting on here. That's one thing you don't ever want to forget, because then you look like an idiot once you've double flared it and you don't have a fitting on it. Done that. And then you take this, and you basically want the hose, or the line, to stick out as thick as this little bottom edge here. So you're going to line it up here, and one-handed, have it right about there. Well, maybe like, oh boy, this is tough with one hand. So right about there. And then you want to tighten up this one first, and then this one. I don't know why that is. There's probably some sort of science behind it. But I always basically do this one first, and it never slips. If I do this one, sometimes it'll slip. I don't know. I can't really explain it. Just do what I say, not as I do, or I don't even know what the saying is there. But either way, do this one, done this one. Okay, let's do it. One thing to mention here is when you're tightening these things, these wing nuts, you always want to take your little pry bar thing that comes with the kit, jam it in here, and use this as extra prying force in both of these things so you can tighten them down really tight. Then you get your 3/16 dealio here. You got your press thing, and now we're going to crank it down until this thing bottoms out. All right, we'll do it. Hey, look, it's bottomed out. All right, now we gotta loosen it up, and then we're gonna remove this little guy and just run this pointer thing down into the line. Sorry, I don't have the real names for this, but I'm a car guy, not a scientist. Okay, so now we got this thing in here, and we're gonna tighten this up until this thing bottoms down, and then that will get us the double flare that I'll show off momentarily. Ta-da! Now we have a totally sweet double flare. So we'll just clean up this end, spray off some of the grease and grossness, and then we'll be ready to install it. But before I do that, I'm going to build the other brake line, which I'm not going to show you on camera because it's the same exact process. So I think we're going to wrap this up this video for tonight. Hope you enjoyed the brake system of the Lemans, and we'll see you next time. See ya.